Tasmad bhavantam anavadyam anantaparam sarvagyam ishwaram akunta vikunta dishyam nirvidnadihi ahamuhe vrajanabhitaptaha narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadhye. Narayanam narasakam sharanam prapadhye. The 10th chapter of the 11th skanda deals with karma, karma yoga, kainkarya. In this chapter, we saw Krishna begins with describing how to transmute ordinary action into a liberating action. Through 4 shlokas, Krishna gives 4 doctrines, 4 laws, which can be seen as alchemy of action. Alchemy means transmuting base metal to gold. How an ordinary action can become liberating in nature. The 4 laws being, first is the law of alignment, aligning every action with Dharma and the divine. When there is that alignment, such an action becomes karma yoga. The second law is the law of inversion, where Krishna reveals how sense-centered actions lead us to a downfall. Through the third law, he reveals our own misconception of this universe, where we get caught with the diversity and we fail to recognize the underlying unity. And then with the fourth law, Krishna helps us to redirect our energies from pravritti to nivritti, the law of redirection. And it is to this that he helps us to realize how an ordinary action actually can become Krishna Kainkarya. So the first 4 shlokas deal with these 4 laws. The next set of shlokas, Krishna brings in the alchemist, the catalyst for the alchemy, the role of the Acharya, the Guru, who acts as the catalyst. And then Krishna teaches Sishya Lakshanas, how to receive jnana, how to receive knowledge bestowed by the Acharya. And then Krishna from shlokas 8 to 11 deals with Atma Deha Viveka. How do we cultivate the Viveka, the power to discriminate between the indwelling Atman and the Deha, the Sharira, and eventually to do Upasana on the Paramatma. We saw in that context various Vidyas. Vidya, Upasana, Jnana, Bhakti, all being, how do we redirect ourselves and connect with Krishna? And then Krishna gave a beautiful analogy as to how jnana is like fire, a fire that gets generated in an interaction between a guru and a sishya. And this fire of jnana burns away samsara bandhana. Now, in the concluding portion of the 10th chapter, Krishna continues this theme of karma and he talks about the fruitive nature of karma, the futility of karma. Now, when we talk about karma, by design, any karma, any action is desire driven. Now, desire driven action sets up for frustration. But then, is desiring good or bad? This is the question that we always have. In the Gita, in the 15th chapter, Krishna gives us the right perspective, a holistic view of desires. Mamaivamsho jivaloke jivabhutas sanatana manashashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati. We are all parts of one whole, which is Krishna. Whenever a part engages in an action independent of Krishna, such an action is set up for failure. Such an action is set up for struggle. Now, when we look at desire and desiring holistically, then we understand the power of desire and the need to redirect our desire. When we look at desiring, there are three parts to desiring: the desirer, the desirable, and the desire. We are all desirers. We are innately desiring because Atma innately desires. Desiring is a unique power. So we are all desirers. And this world is filled with desirables. And our desires are directed towards the worldly objects, the desirables. Now, this is where we set ourselves for frustration and failure. Because the very purpose of a desire, the desire of the Atman, the desire of the soul, is to connect it with the whole. That is the only purpose of a desire. The power of desire is to connect every individual soul with Krishna. Now, when this desire is misdirected, we, the desirers, are disconnected from the supreme desire. Krishna is the supreme desirer. We are parts of the supreme desirer, and therefore we too are desirers. Now, we may ask, is Krishna too a desirer? He is the supreme desire. And what does he desire? He desires us. His desire is directed towards us, and our desires are directed away from him. Now, our desire is meant to be directed towards him. But then we ask, this world is filled with desirables. But then, when we realize every desirable is a spark of the supreme desirability of Krishna, then everything and anything that attracts our desire is nothing but a channel towards the ultimate desire, the Krishna himself. So, desire per se is not the problem. Misdirected desire is the problem. That's why Krishna says, Manashashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati, he says. Karshati, struggle. When we are disconnected from Krishna, when we think we are independent enjoyers, he is the ultimate enjoyer. He is the only enjoyer. When we think we are the enjoyers, and when we are driven by selfish desires to do actions for our enjoyment, then everything that we do is nothing but struggle. Karshati. Manashashtani indriyani. Using our indriyas and with our mana, every action that we perform is nothing but a struggle. Now, the same theme is being reflected here in the conversation with Uddhava. Shloka 16 and 17, Krishna points out to the futility of worldly striving. Krishna gives some very stark examples to drive home the point as to how we can cultivate Nirveda, understanding the futility of selfish actions. Shlokas 18 and 19, Krishna takes up a very interesting topic, the unpredictability of outcomes. This is one topic we keep discussing forever, and we'll come to that. because we do not understand the divine orchestration. And many times the divine orchestration of events transcends our logic. So we always end up questioning outcomes of our actions, not understanding the why. So shlokas 18 and 19, Krishna deals with unpredictability of outcomes. Shloka number 20, Krishna talks about how our mortality is our shadow. It's saying, where Krishna says, desire is like death wearing perfume. A desire is like death wearing perfume. Because in every desire, the desire to enjoy the world, there is the scent of death, because this perfume of death essentially hides the scent of impermanence, the scent of decay. Because the more we are driven by the desire, this desire, it eventually leads to mrityu, the cycle of repeated births and deaths. We do not realize every time we are compelled by our cravings, driven by our desires to enjoy sense objects, our own mortality comes with us as a shadow. We just ignore to recognize it. Quite a startling fact that Krishna reminds here in this conversation. And then, Shloka 21 onwards, Krishna talks about how material happiness too is corrupted. The effort to gain material happiness is like trying to grow a crop in an infested land. If somebody has to grow a crop in an infested land, one will repeatedly fail. The soil is infested and there are pests everywhere. What is the point in repeatedly trying to sow seeds and trying to grow the crops? There will be only repeated failures. Similarly, trying to gain material happiness in the samsaric world is a similar exercise. So Krishna says, anything that we consider as happiness in this material world is corrupted, not just in Bhuloka, in every loka, right up to Satyaloka. So Krishna therefore now takes the focus into the mechanics of karma and understanding the futile nature of fruitive, reward-based karma. Tatrapi karmanam kartuhu asvatantriam cha lakshate bhoktuscha dukha sukhayoho konvartaha vivasham bhajet. Sloka number 17 gives the answer to the question, what is the role of our action in shaping the results? We all want to know this. Do we have a role or we don't have a role? We would want to believe that we only have the role, because we want to believe that the outcomes are controlled by us, because we cannot digest the fact that we are not the controllers. So we tend to believe that we have control over everything that we do. Now, Krishna now gives us an answer to this question. Are we masters of our destiny or not? This again is a very important question to which he gives an answer in a very, very unique way. Tatrapi karmanam kartruhu asvatantram cha lakshate. In the matter of one's effort to obtain happiness, when we strive for happiness, and every action that we do is essentially to gain happiness, in that matter, Krishna says, asvatantram cha lakshate. The reality is that we have no independence. We have no independence when we do an action. Bhoktuscha dukkha sukhayoho. And even when we experience the outcome, which could be sukha or dukkha, we don't have any independence. We think we have independence in doing the action, and we also have independence in experiencing the fruits of the action. Krishna busts that myth and says, neither we have total control on the action that we do, nor on experiencing the result of the action that we do. He says, Onvartaha vivasham bhajet. What is the value in pursuit of such desire prompted actions? What is the value? We are wasting our time in pursuing actions for the sake of material happiness. So, aswatantriya, the lack of independence. So, the question that we need to therefore ask here is, are we masters of our destiny or not? Now, when we say karma, karma means action, karma also means destiny. Dharma also stands for destiny, another meaning of karma. And what is destiny? Destiny is nothing but consequences of our own past actions. In many ways, our destiny in this life is our own prarabdha. Sometimes prarabdha is also called daiva, because ultimately karma phala is essentially given to us based on our own karma. We get karma phala. Now, when we do any action, what determines the outcome? We must ask. One is our own effort that goes into that action. But as we are acting, our prarabdha is also in motion. So, which means every outcome essentially is a product of not only our current action, it is also influenced by the prarabdha, the consequences of our previous actions. Because throughout the life, prarabdha is in motion. That is the reason why many times we do not understand the nature of outcomes. Somebody goes and puts a small effort and hits a jackpot. Wondering, how come this happened? It's like somebody is saying, I put in 1 dirham, I won 1,000,000 dirham. We call it luck, but there is nothing called luck. Now, with a little effort, suddenly there can be a great outcome. We may wonder, how come this little effort is causing the great outcome? No, there, prarabdha has been favorable to us. When daiva is favorable, that favorable prarabdha plus our current karma brings about a favorable outcome, which is not in proportion to the effort that we put in. Many times it also happens, we put in a lot of effort and then the outcome is a disaster. Outcome is a calamity, is a catastrophe. With all good faith, we put so much of effort. And then we wonder, what is this? Why is this happening to me? Prarabdha is unfavorable. Daiva is unfavorable. When it is unfavorable, along with the effort that we put in, the outcome is again not in proportion to our effort. So, while we are responsible in one way or the outcomes, we are makers of our destiny, but we are not masters of our destiny. We are makers of our destiny. Why? Because even the daiva, the prarabdha, is nothing but the consequence of our own past actions. So to that extent, we definitely are makers. But then why we are not the masters? So if we have to come up with a mathematical formula for the outcomes of our action, what can be the formula? Karma phala. If the karma phala is the outcome, what is the mathematical formula to arrive at karma phala? Karma plus daiva is equal to karma phala. Karma, our current action, plus daiva, the interplay of the prarabdha, which is coming from the previous actions, is equal to karma phala. But is it a complete equation by itself? There is one other factor that is missing here. Now, this daiva, the prarabdha, the way it manifests favorably or unfavorably is also not in our control. Today, I do an action, my daiva is favorable, I get a fantastic outcome. Tomorrow, I do the same action, If my daiva is not favorable, I may not get the same outcome. Now, whom do you blame this? Now the action, the quantum of my effort remains the same, but the outcome seems to be not in proportion to the quantum of my effort, because at one time my deva is favorable, other time it is unfavorable. So the manifestation of deva is also not in my control. Therefore, there is another factor. What is that factor? Phala. So what is the complete mathematical equation? Karma plus daiva plus kala is equal to karma phala. We are makers of our destiny, but we are not masters of our destiny, because kala is not in our control. Kala is beyond our control. And what should manifest when should the prarabdha favorably influence our current action, and when should it unfavorably influence our current action is beyond our control. It is determined by kala, and therefore karma phala, the outcome, is not totally in our control. We can only contribute to it, we can never control it. And there is no reason, there is no point for us to struggle, beat ourselves against an outcome that comes as a result of any action. Therefore, Krishna here says, Aswatantriyam cha lakshate, is clearly seen. Aswatantriya, which means we don't have any independence whatsoever in what we do and in what we experience as an outcome. Therefore, if there is no control, then why are we chasing something over which we have no control? It is common sense that if we have no control on something, we must not be chasing something. But common sense is never common. And therefore, we end up chasing things which are always beyond our control and always in frustration, because we expect something and what happens is exactly against our expectations. So Krishna therefore here says, therefore the role of our present actions in shaping the results of our action is definitely not definitive. Our role is not definitive. Our role is only contribute. It is not we have a role to play, no doubt about that. But we must not assume that it is a definitive. We cannot definitely influence the nature of the outcome of our actions. Such it is the nature of all karma that we end up doing. And Krishna therefore here says, if such is the case, why must we actually pursue? The question here is very important. Bhoktuscha dukkha sukhayoho konvartaha vivasham bhajet. What is the value in pursuing that? Because in our life and living, we are always pursuing quality of living, isn't it? We forget another important factor. There are two factors that are important in our life and living. One is the quality of living, the other is the quality of our longing. Our focus is always on the quality of living. But the problem here is, when the focus is only on the quality of living, improving the quality of our living, it does not change our state, our miserable state, because we may keep acquiring more and more, yet remain miserable. In fact, the more we acquire, the more miserable we are, because we want to acquire more and more. So therefore, improving our quality of living does not guarantee that we can experience true happiness. And therefore, we must shift our focus from the quality of living to the quality of our longing. And how can we improve our quality of longing? We don't need to eliminate longing. In fact, we should not. We must elevate it. And how do we elevate it? When we long to belong to Krishna. That is the elevation that we need to. And when that elevation happens, then we don't need to worry too much about the quality of living. Our quality of longing will take care of our happiness. So it is not the possessions and the positions that bring us happiness. It is essentially the quality of our longing that brings us happiness. Krishna, therefore, he says, one must therefore realize the futility of doing material rewards driven actions. Then he goes on to take the next, with two shlokas, 18 and 19, he takes up the topic of the unpredictability of outcomes. This is where we must understand divine orchestration, which many times transcends our logic. Na dehinam sukham kinchit vidyate vidushamapi tatacha dukkham mudhanam vrata ahankaranam param. Vritha, useless, ahankaranam, false ego. Now, what Krishna here is saying, we all observe in this material world, and this is one of the most often repeated question in satsang. In my last 10-12 years of satsang, if there is one question that has been repeated forever, be it in the Q&A group or here, this is this one question. We'll all nod our heads the moment I say what that question is. Krishna says, it is observed within this material world, dehinam sukham kinchit vidyate vidushamapi, that even wise people do not seem to be experiencing happiness. Even good people, people who cultivate virtues, seem to undergo miseries all the time. Similarly, tathacha dukkham mudhanam vidyate vidushammapi tathacha dukkham mudha. Similarly, sometimes even great fools seem to be escaping miseries, seem to be enjoying, experiencing happiness. Why is this so? Essentially, simply put, why bad things happen to good people and good things happen to bad people? Isn't this the most popular question asked ever? Krishna essentially is taking up that question. He says, the concept of becoming happy by performing material activities is simply, he says, a useless exhibition of false egotism. He says, vritha ahankaranam. Essentially, if I try to become happy by engaging in actions that are desire driven, material actions, then essentially it is an exhibition of useless egotism, he says. So therefore, we must now understand what is Krishna trying to address here. To the question, why bad things happen to good people? We observe around that even people who come to satsang, they seem to be undergoing lots of turmoil. People not coming to satsang and enjoying. So suddenly should we come to satsang or we should not come to satsang? That questions also come, because suddenly we seem, the world outside is enjoying, having a great time, and they're doing all kinds of nonsense. Still they're enjoying. See, we are doing all kinds of sadhanas for years and years. We are doing sadhanas. We are cultivating all the virtues and the wisdom that Gita and the Shastra is giving. But still, it looks like we are not free from the pains of this world. So, why bad things happen to good people? You must understand what Krishna is saying. Bad things don't happen to good people, they happen for them. They don't happen. Bad things don't happen to good people. I repeat, they happen for them. There's a difference. What is the difference? When I take fire, when fire meets gold, the world says, oh, it is burning. When fire meets gold, the world that is looking around says it is burning. But the gold smiles and says, I am being purified. Very important to reflect on this. Pain and pleasure are used by the world to measure our life and living. But Bhagavan doesn't measure our life with pain and pleasure. It measures it by our progress and our purification. So therefore, bad things don't happen to good people. They happen for them, because pain refines our devotion. Pain refines our bhakti. Pleasure tests our detachment. Pain and pleasure will alternate. There is no escaping. Everyone, the saint and the sinner, everyone and anybody in the spectrum, they have to go through these dualities. They have to undergo this alternating, fluctuating pain and pleasure. But these are not verdicts given by Bhagavan. Pain and pleasure are not Krishna's verdicts, they are Krishna's tools. Because Bhagavan does not punish us, neither does he favor us. What does he do? He only treats us. He treats us. It's like, samsara is like a hospital. Every samsari, every baddha jiva is a patient. And every patient requires different treatment. Only the expert doctor knows which patient needs to undergo which treatment. And therefore, for some patients, the treatment can be more painful than the other. Some patients seem to be getting 5-star treatment. Today hospitals are also 5-star. It's like checking into staycation, right? You're going to a 5-star hotel, beautiful room, but it's still a hospital. One needs to get discharged, not always desire to go back to the hospital, right? Even if it has 5-star comforts, who in the sane mind will think I will go check into the hospital tomorrow? I would want to get discharged. Similarly, even in samsara, why must we be thinking of going back again? It is about getting discharged, means it is getting out of samsara. Pain and pleasure, therefore, are not verdicts. They are tools. They are treatments. So, therefore, when good people undergo bad experiences, now this good and bad are again labels that we give. Who are we to define what is a good experience and what is a bad experience? This again is a label that is of our own making, because what today I think as a bad experience possibly is a blessing in disguise for me. All of us, in retrospect, many times we think of our own lives and we look at the past, what happened in the past, and at that time we would have said, what a disaster that struck me. Retrospect, now with wisdom we will say, good, it really happened. Good, it really happened because it was a blessing at that time. So therefore, good and bad experiences are just our own labeling to experience. There is an experience. An experience is a treatment. It is neither good nor bad. It's like saying I take a medicine and say this is like a sweet medicine, this is a bitter medicine. How does it matter? Medicine is medicine that needs to be consumed. It doesn't matter if it is sweet or it is bitter. And what medicine to be given is decided by the universal doctor. We cannot question him. Why did you give me today a bitter medicine? Give me a sweet medicine. No. My sickness requires this medicine. Therefore, he is prescribing it to me. So therefore, Krishna, he says, one must, and the other question that we immediately ask, okay, now why bad people always, why bad things happen to good people? Reverse this. Why good things happen to bad people? You must understand that it is only a rehearsal. It is a dress rehearsal for a downfall, for an eventual downfall. It is like, imagine somebody is thrown from Burj Dubai, from the topmost floor. They are falling, downfall. They are falling all the way down. And as they are falling, there is a drop of honey and it falls on their lip and they are tasting. They say, wow, so sweet, so enjoyable. In matter of time, they're going to fall down and crash and perish. But at that, when you freeze that particular moment where they are enjoying the honey, will you say, how fortunate they are enjoying that honey? Will we say that? Because we know that it is just that fraction, in no matter of time, they are going to fall and crash. So therefore, time that we see is just relative. We think if somebody in this lifetime, that rogue is enjoying, why? Maybe he's saying for 20 years, he's saying, what is 20 years in eternity? It is like that fraction of a time. So therefore, when the bad seems to prosper, it is not a reward. It is just a dress rehearsal for the downfall. Because ultimately, nobody can escape the inescapable law of karma. So Krishna here, therefore, again reiterates. So therefore, it is the action that one must do is not for the sake of experiencing good or bad. Because everything that we do it with the object of a good outcome where I must experience happiness. But the problem here is whether I am going to experience happiness or not is not in my control. And therefore, I don't set up myself for frustration and failure if my action is driven by a desire for my own happiness, for my own selfishness. So Krishna therefore here says, na dehinam sukham kinchid vidyate vidushamapi tatacha dukkham mudhanam vrita ahankaranam. It is vrita ahankaranam. It is just a display of false egotism, useless display. Now, Krishna now talks about how people must understand what it actually means going after sense gratification. Yadi praptim vighatam cha janati sukha dukkhayoh tepi adhara viduryogam mrityurna prabhavedyata. This is little startling in the way Krishna presents it here. Even if people understand how to gain happiness and avoid unhappiness, at least that's what most of us think, because we are all, whatever we do for two things: ishta prapti, anishta nivritti. Every action that we do is only for these two reasons. Ishta prapti, we want what we like, and we want to avoid what we dislike, because we are driven by our likes and dislikes all the time. So every action is driven by this desire, ishta prapti, anishta nivritti. The inherent belief there is, I understand how to gain true happiness, and I understand how to avoid unhappiness. That is the inherent belief. Now, Krishna says, even if people believe so, even if they really understand, yadi praptim vighatam cha janati sukha dukkhayoh tepi adhana viduryogam mrityurna prabhavedyata. Even if someone understands how to attain happiness or avoid unhappiness in their engagement with the world, they still do not understand how to manage death when it arrives in the process of constantly trying to chase happiness and unhappiness. Because the question is, in our life, the meaning that we give to our life is about acquiring, about possessing what we like and avoiding what we dislike. Now, in this process, we completely forget that a time will come when everything that we have been doing throughout the life becomes meaningless. Death makes everything that we do in life totally meaningless. Just imagine if somebody has been just focused on increasing one's balance, bank balance throughout one's life, doing nothing else. Wake up in the morning, think about what is my balance today. Go to bed, make a note of what is my balance at the end of the day. If this has been one's whole life, what would happen when death arrives? What would be the meaning? It destroys the very meaning of life. Now, if somebody understands how to be happy and how to avoid happiness in that kind of a life, even that somebody, Krishna says, they do not know how to control the timing of the death itself. That is why desire is death wearing a perfume. Because every selfish desire that is drawing us towards the world essentially hides within it impermanence, hides within its decay, and getting drawn towards that in that process, we completely forget that this we are going in the wrong direction, and this is essentially setting ourselves for downfall. And when death happens, it becomes just a doorway for another birth. So what Krishna is saying, mrutyumna prabhavedyata. This is the limits of human mastery. Tepyadhana viduryogam mrutyurna prabhaverada. That which means they do not know. Yoga here means the process by which death, the control of death can be managed, by which one can get away from the control of death. So the sight of death must transform into insight about our own mortality. We fail to acknowledge this, that we are all mortals. We see death all around, but we don't tell ourselves that one day it will come to us as well. We are always talking about death as though it is only for somebody else. And unfortunately, in today's world, we become so very insensitive. Kids are playing video games where hundreds of people are being killed in a fraction of a second. Everything that we see on TV, the movies show death as though it's a child's play. We switch TV channels, we are only talking of hundreds of people dying everywhere. We become so insensitive, we just think it is just another thing. And in that process, the insight about our own mortality is completely lost. So therefore, death must not be destroyer of meaning, it must actually be restorer of meaning in our lives. The moment we realize that at the point of death, it is not that everything in our life is getting destroyed. After all, we are immortal. There is a part of us which is immortal. Then we try to find meaning to what we do in this very life. Why? Because death cannot come and rob us of that meaning when we have to exit. So therefore, death need not be destroyer of meaning, it can be restorer of meaning. And Krishna, therefore, he says, there is no point in trying to cultivate the practice of going after happiness and avoiding unhappiness, because ultimately we cannot manage that expiry date, which is beyond our control. Then what is the very purpose? So what do we do, therefore, to spiritually progress, to get a new insight on our own immortality? How do we cultivate this knowledge? The reason why Krishna takes us through this flow of showing on the futility of our worldly actions and as death which is constantly knocking on the door is to realize how we must go beyond our own captivity. Now, we all in our life and living lead our lives as though we can control everything around in this world. This is how material progress is made. How is material progress is made? By man trying to conquer nature. Material progress, advancements in technology is all about trying to conquer nature, conquer the world. In the process of keeping the world in our captivity, we end up in captivity. We become captive. We become imprisoned. Without our knowledge, by trying to become masters of the world, we end up being slaves of the world. So we lead our lives as slaves in captivity. So therefore, first we must recognize that we are captives. It's like saying we are patients in a hospital. We are captives. We are meant first to recognize that. Then the next stage from captivity is to understand the futility. The futility of trying to gain anything in this world. Because anything that we gain in this world will only set us up for eventual frustration. So from captivity, we have to move to a stage of understanding the futility of our material actions. Now, then immediately the question is asked, is then Krishna saying, knowing that it is futile to engage with this world, should I completely disengage? No. There is a purpose for this world. What is that purpose? it has to become our utility. Recognizing its futility, it must become a utility, which means the same world which captivates us can be used as a resource for us for our spiritual sadhana, for our spiritual progress. So the same object which captivated us can be used as a resource in our service to Krishna. So therefore, the world is, therefore we can engage in this world. We don't need to disengage. We don't need to become sannyasis, completely disengage. We engage with the world, and the resources that are given can be used not for our personal enjoyment, but for serving Krishna and serving Krishna's world. So therefore, by point, and once that happens, the same karma which was binding in nature, where we are still engaging with the world, we are still using the worldly resources, but the action is the same. The resources used are the same, but now the same action is no longer binding. It becomes liberating in nature. We see, therefore, Krishna now pointing now to the corruption of the material happiness. He says, Konvarta sukayatyenam kamova mrityurantike aghatam niyamanasya baddhasyena tushtidaha. What possible happiness can people derive from material objects or gratification they provide? Krishna asks this question. Because it's like, he gives an example, we all know this, when in the good old day, it happens even now, when a goat is taken to be sacrificed, first it is fed nicely, and then it is taken, boom, sacrifice is done. And also prisoners who are going to be condemned for capital punishment, before they are taken, they're well fed. Krishna is saying, what possible happiness can people derive from sense gratification, because they are everything exactly like a condemned man being dragged towards the place of execution. We just don't realize that we are actually being dragged to the place of execution. What is the point? He says, Konvarta sukayatyenam kamova mrityurantike. Once we realize this, then we start questioning this sense gratification, what value it actually brings to me. And then, Shrutam cha drishtavad dushtam spardhasuyatyayaihi bahvantare kamatvad krishivat chapi nishpalam. Says, even heavenly joy is polluted by jealousy, by decay, by death. Because even in the Vedas, when we do something good, even kamya karma, we accumulate punya karma, then we go to higher planets. We can go to Swarga. He says, even when we go to higher planets, even when we go to Swarga, even the happiness in Swarga is also corrupted, is also contaminated, because even that is part of this created world. It is also part of this Prakrita Mandala. Therefore, he says, this spardha, jealousy, asuya, envy, atyaya, death also happens. So we may think that if I go to Swarga, then I can have eternal happiness. But there too, there is an expiry date. And even there, the happiness that is experienced even by those celestial beings is also corrupted. And a day will come when I am enjoying, somebody will come and say, it's time for you to be discharged. Even in Swargaloka, there is a time. It's like we are in a rented house. When the landlord knocks the door and says you have to vacate, we have to vacate. So every loka that the jiva occupies in the Prakrita Mandala is only rented. Even the devatas only have rented happiness. And the landlord, he controls, when must it end, when must it start. Therefore here, Krishna therefore says, even if we aspire to go to higher lokas by acquiring more and more of punya karma, eventually even that happiness is corrupted. And even there, our tenancy will come to an end sooner or later. So therefore, once again, we have to come back where we started, because it goes on in circles around and around. Even when we do what the Vedas say, the Karma Kandas are the Vedas. Here, this is where Krishna is now driving us from the primary stage of the spiritual seeker to the secondary stage. The primary stage is doing all the karmas religiously, doing all the rituals religiously. Even there, if doing those rituals, doing those practices, if it is only for punya, then we continue to be in the same journey of the cyclic journey. Because he says even perfect ritualism cannot protect us from time. And who is time? Who is Kala? Bhagavan himself. So essentially what he says, we cannot avoid being pushed by time. We cannot avoid being pushed by time, but we can choose where we are pushed by time. I think I confused you. Let me repeat the statement. We cannot avoid being pushed by time. This is very clear. Why we cannot avoid pushed by time? Because whatever we do, we are constantly, when we are acquiring punya or papa karma, we are taking rebirth, and we are taking rebirth again in different lokas, different places, different forms. We are going in the cycle and again and again. So being pushed by time cannot be avoided. But where we are pushed by time is up to us. We can choose to be pushed to be within the samsara, or we can choose to be discharged from this samsara, hospital called samsara. That is up to us. Going back to the same analogy of the patients in the hospital, we can choose to continue to be in this. It's like saying, one patient checks into one hospital, goes through one treatment, then he goes second hospital, he goes to the third hospital. So imagine if somebody is going from one hospital to the other all the time, going through various treatments. We may laugh at them. What is this? Don't you want to be discharged and go home? And then the patient says, what is home? Is there something called home? I thought life is all about one hospital or the other. This Baddha Jiva is in a similar state. First question is, what is home? Is there something called home? Where Krishna is waiting for us? First we must know that. Then, if there is something called home, then we must actually get discharged from the hospital. Not to move to another hospital, but actually find our way back home. So, we are pushed by time to keep going on in this cycle, or we can choose, yes, still pushed by time, but where we go, the destination we can choose. And what determines our destination? Our action. What determines our action? Our identity. So, three things that define us: identity, activity, destination. When we have no clue of our identity, when we have misplaced identity, that misplaced identity shapes our action, and our actions are kamya karma, selfish actions, and these selfish actions are futile. Manashashtani indriyani prakritistani karshati. We keep struggling. That is why popularly it is said life is a struggle. At whatever stage, for everyone, we think it is only for some. No, for a millionaire, life is a struggle. For a pauper, life is a struggle. For a trillionaire also, life is a struggle. Why? Because the misplaced identity shapes actions which essentially are shaping the destiny. And the destiny is what? To be again checking into the next hospital. I check out from this hospital, I go to the next hospital, which means I check out from this body in a particular world, I check into the next body in another environment. And this check-in and check-out is happening constantly without realizing that actually I have an option to completely get discharged, get treated. So I need to recognize that I have checked into this hospital for a treatment. I must then believe that there is this doctor who is treating me. I receive the treatment and I undergo this treatment and I take the right medicines that I've been given. I truly cure my sickness. Then I'm ready for discharge. I'm ready for the exit to take out of the samsara. So, the way we see, Krishna is leading to this realization that eventually we must know that we cannot continue to be in the state, a conditioned state as a samsaric state. And Uddhava immediately asked the question. So, can you, Krishna, explain to me the difference between a conditioned state and a liberated state? And that is the subject matter of 11th chapter of Uddhava Gita. Sarvam Sri Krishna Arpanamstu.